You can see a slight delay here. There was a delay in having this main event to begin with. Remember how he started that 6th round? He scored a knockdown. He's coming forward. Here comes Holyfield, but he gets caught by a short right hand from Riddick Bowe.
Boxing is one of the most famous contact sports in the world. In the middle of the last century, with the beginning of the era of television, boxing acquired the status of the most popular martial art in the world. In today's video, we are going to take a look at the history of boxing from the perspective of the best boxing fights, which had a huge, epic-making significance in the history of boxing. These are legendary fights that filled huge stadiums, grabbed the attention of hundreds of millions of spectators, and forever changed the history of boxing itself. If you enjoyed watching this episode on our channel, please click the thumbs up and subscribe to the world of boxing. Here, we grab a sense of nostalgia and recall the best fights in the ring, which go down in the annals of boxing history. June 8, 2002, Mike Tyson versus Lennox Lewis. To get the whole story of the Lewis-Tyson confrontation, you need to start in 1984 when they were both amateurs and met during a sparring match. Mike Tyson's manager at the time, Cus D'Amato, predicted that these two would one day meet in the professional ring. But early on, their careers diverged. In 1987, when Tyson became the absolute world champion, Lewis was preparing for his second Olympiad, in which he eventually won gold. Even though Lennox is only 10 months older than Tyson, he reached his peak in professional boxing in the second half of the 90s, while Tyson's peak fell in the second half of the 80s. While Lewis was gaining strength, Mike's affairs were already going, and to put it mildly, not very well. A prison term knocked him out of boxing for 4 years, and later a disqualification after a scandalous rematch with Holyfield took him out for another 1.5. But even when Mike was training, he was not consistent. He alternated with trips to clubs, drinking alcohol and using drugs. Even with all his problems, when he returned to the ring in 1999 after being disqualified for biting Holyfield's ear, he fought 5 times and won each time in the first or second round, although 2 of the fights were also declared invalid. During the Orlin Norris fight, Tyson struck his opponent after the bell, and Norris could not continue the match. After the fight with Andrew Golota, it was discovered that Mike had traces of marijuana in his system. But few people paid any attention to it. The industry started talking about the possibility of a Lewis-Tyson fight, and the combination of these 2 names excited everyone. In early 2001, talk began about the fact that Lewis and Tyson could meet after Lewis defended his titles against Hasim Rahman. But Rahman's right hand almost ended that dream. Luckily, Lewis won a spectacular revenge match, and then the big fight was announced during a press conference on the 22nd of January 2002, with the fight being held on April 6th in Las Vegas.
I was going to rip his heart out. I'm the best ever. I'm the most brutal and vicious and most ruthless champion there's ever been. My style is impetuous. My defense is impregnable. And I'm just ferocious. I want your heart. I want to eat his children. Praise be to Allah.
Despite the fact that Lewis had a contract with HBO and Tyson with Showtime, the fight was allowed to continue. For the sake of such a large event, even the rival cable networks came to an agreement. But after Tyson got into a fight at a press conference during which he bit Lewis on the leg, Nevada deprived Mike of his license. All the major boxing states of California, New York, and Texas joined the protest against Tyson's behavior. As a result, the fight went to Memphis, Tennessee, where local sponsors paid promoters $12.5 million to host the fight. Both boxers earned record fees for that time, with Tyson receiving more than $30 million and Lewis in the area of $25 million. Lennox was the favorite at 2-1. Many observers noted that the real breakdown was 4-1 or maybe 5-1, but the charisma of Mike Tyson played a role in influencing many to put their money on his victory, which was reflected in pre-match odds.
Well, what can happen when you have dynamite.
The start of the fight was an inspiration to those who supported Tyson. Mike started the fight dynamically and energetically, as in his best years. However, Lewis was not going to take the blows and responded to the opponent's aggression with a series of uppercuts. It was with these blows that Lennox tried to meet Tyson's attack, though his strategy also included using clinches to stop Mike.
50 pounds. You better fight Tyson. You better fight him. You better fight him good. You start.
The most memorable moment of the first round was the performance of Tyson's left hook, which suggested that maybe Lewis was not such an obvious favorite in this fight. However, pretty quickly it became clear that Mike's resources would not last long. Already in the middle of the second round, Lewis started strategically hitting Tyson at the moments when Iron Mike was ready to launch an attack.
And delivered shot in. That's the danger of fighting a taller guy. But he's doing an excellent job of out-jabbing him now.
In the third round, Tyson got a grip and started pressing again and applied a heavy left hook, which clearly made Lewis pause and begin to act more carefully. Lennox worked neatly, quickly, and focused on defense, realizing that even this version of Iron Mike could knock down any opponent with one precise blow.
By Lennox Lewis, but he is always dangerous.
Lennox Lewis has been holding too much.
George, he's also been punching the crap out of him.
Lewis told us that no matter what, Ronnie Shields spent 8 weeks teaching Mike Tyson techniques. And we see less bobbing and weaving.
In round 4, Lewis went on the counterattack and Tyson fell. For many, a turning point had been reached and the outcome of the fight became obvious. Lewis did not shock Tyson. The problem was how Tyson fell and how hard it was for him to get up. The first round saw the good old Iron Mike. Now, a few rounds later, it was obvious that age and lifestyle had taken its toll, and even a violation for a low punch by Lewis could not change the outcome.
Connecting on 27 for 69% in the fourth round. Tyson 5 of 27.
Lewis, that long jab stopped anything.
In round 5, Lewis acted primarily with quick and easy jabs, rarely using his right hand. Such excessive caution infuriated Lennox's trainer, Emmanuel Stewart.
Because you got a dead man in front of you and you still do this. Just let that shit go. This fight is all the way. You gonna fuck around and let him catch you with some shit if you don't watch. This man is dead out there, but he wants to quit. You want the man to say that let this shit go. Right hand over top, right hand uppercut. Stay alert, man. Any long as this fight going, this man is dangerous. You better get him out of here. Goddamn right. This is ridiculous.
As Lewis later recalled, he had injured his hand and wanted to give himself a couple of rounds of rest, but did not dare to tell the coach about it, even though the coach was angry with his current style. Lewis stopped favoring the injured hand, and from that moment on, the duel turned into a one-sided performance, with Lennox clearly outperforming Tyson, who became exhausted and began to miss out on important opportunities.
All you have to know is that so far, it's all Lewis.
Sometimes he pushes him away. He just doesn't have the power now.
Clearly the aggressor inside the ring.
Maybe your corner should come in and rescue your fighter. It's not going to get any better for him. I have him on myself.
Suddenly, in the 8th round, Lennox Lewis again seemed to pause the attack and even allowed Tyson to carry out several sluggish attacks of his own, although they were not up to Tyson's previous standards. Then it became clear that Lewis was just waiting for the right moment to strike.
Lennox Lewis tripling Mike Tyson with a big uppercut, and Eddie Cotton separates the fighter.
Even though Tyson did not touch the floor, and officially the referee did not have the right to start a count, he did, counting a knockdown and giving Mike time to recover. But this only delayed the inevitable. A little less than a minute later, an exact right cross to the chin was performed by Lewis, putting an end to one of the most high-profile and largest monetary matches in the history of boxing.
It's over. Lennox Lewis cements his legacy.
Many people were upset to see the defeat of Mike Tyson. People wanted to believe in a miracle, that Iron Mike would suddenly return to his old self for at least one evening. But that Tyson was bygone, a champion of the 80s. Because of his reputation, Tyson got a fight with Lewis, who at the moment was unquestionably the best heavyweight in the world. As for Lennox, the victory was perhaps the most enjoyable in his career, although he did not encounter much competition. The 90s gave boxing fans a lot of spectacular fights, and the pragmatic style of Lewis was sharply criticized. Plus, he was an outsider to the Americans. Because of his style, many from the United States questioned his real boxing talent and fighting character. Before the fight, they said that Lewis did not have the courage, and that Tyson in his current condition would throw him off the throne. But in reality, everything turned out differently. Lewis beat and knocked out the one who, in the eyes of the mass public, was a real monster. A monster who claimed that he was eager to devour Lewis's children. But, as it often happens, all the negative energy burns out at the end of the fight. We would like to end this story showing blows where the once ruthless Tyson merely wiped the sweat off of Lewis's brow.
How sorry are you guys that this fight did not occur many years ago when you were at your best, and probably you weren't quite as old either?
Well, you know, the funny thing about that is, you know, heavyweights mature at different times. I would say Mike Tyson matured at 19. Nothing was standing in his way at that time. He ruled the planet at that time. But I'm like fine wine. I come along later on, and you know, I learned my art, and I went along, just took my time, and I came along and just ruled. I'm ruling now.
Mike, are you sorry this fight didn't take place years ago?
It wasn't meant to be. I've known Luke ever since he was 16, 15 years old. I have mad respect. Everything I said was in proposition for promoting the fight. He knows I love him and his mother, and I know if he thinks I don't have respect and don't love him, he's crazy.
So you're saying a lot of the behavior, Mike, is just to sell tickets, and that doesn't represent your true feelings?
Well, he knows who I am, and he knows I'm not disrespectful. I respect this man as a brother. He knew me ever since his friend Bernie and Cuss were together, and he knows I have the much respect for him. Like I said before, he's a magnificent, a prolific fighter, and he should continue fighting. I would just love for him to give me another shot.
March 13th, 1993. It is very rare when a fight in the lighter weights attracts great attention. But on this day, the attention of the entire boxing world was riveted on the unification fight in the first flyweight. IBF champion, 25-year-old American Michael Carbajal entered the ring in a long-awaited fight against WBC champion, 26-year-old Mexican Humberto Gonzalez. All boxing fans remember well that the two legendary ring announcers, Michael Buffer and Jimmy Lennon Jr., jointly announced the rivals. They also did this in the matches between Mike Tyson and Lennox Lewis, and Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao. But this was the first time they had done it in a lighter weight. The official ring announcer was Lennon, but for some reason Carbajal demanded that he be announced by Buffer. To give some history, leading up to the fight, in 1988, Carbajal took part in the Olympic Games in Seoul, where he won silver. And Gonzalez, by that time, had 22 fights in the professional ring. In 1989, Carbajal made his professional debut, and Gonzalez won his first champion title. Michael won his first title in the summer of 1990, and from that moment, interest in this matchup began to grow. But at the end of the year, there was a surprise. During Gonzalez's sixth defense of the title, he lost by knockout to an unknown Filipino named Rolando Pascua. Gonzalez was unable to take revenge, because in the next fight, Pascua lost the title, and Gonzalez instead met with the winner of that fight, Melchor Cab Castro. Gonzalez regained the title and defended it 4 times, which brought back interest in the fight with Carbajal, who by now had 6 successful defenses of his own IBF belt. There was such a stir around this confrontation that in the 2 months before the fight, Carbajal and Gonzalez appeared on the covers of many magazines and newspapers in the U.S. and Mexico. Their fight was the first in the history of the flyweights to top the pay-per-view show. Each received $1 million for the fight. Carbajal and Gonzalez became the first boxers in the history of these weight classes to earn $1 million. This surpassed the previous earnings record for the fight between Oscar de la Hoya and Jeff Mayweather.
Any questions here? Let's get it on.
There's more shtick in this ring right now. We got here.
All right, here we go. It's scheduled for 12. The unification. Might be top of that. To the delight of his fans, Gonzalez bangs away with a left and then a right.
And sometimes when Michael Carbajal gets in trouble,
Tendency, Al, when he throws that left to bring it by way of third base, which might leave him wide open for that uppercut.
yeah, and Carbajal has a good right hand. Now, on the inside men, good punchers, good technicians. Carbajal may be a little better technician, but Gonzalez as tough as you would want.
Gonzalez went on the offense from the very first rounds of the fight, and Carbajal was forced to work the counterattack. In the second round, Gonzalez increased the pressure, while Humberto periodically changed his stance, with the left-handed stance being the most effective. It was in this position that Gonzalez knocked down his opponent in the second round.
Sailed over the head of Humberto Chiquita Gonzalez.
And you know,
down goes Carbajal. Solid left hand, sent him flat on the back of his lap. The count is at 5. 6.
from Gonzalez in the left-handed stance. So Carbajal finds out about the power of Gonzalez, and I don't think they want Carbajal on the ropes, which is where he is.
Well, there's a lot of rounds yet to be fought. There's the bell. He looks at Gonzalez and makes a face at him as he goes by. That didn't hurt Gonzalez at all. All right, Ruben.
I trust him. I trust him.
And it might be Carbajal.
It doesn't look as though Gonzalez is showing any blood as Carbajal bangs.
After the first 2 rounds, Carbajal lost 3 points on the referee's cards. It was necessary to close the gap, and he increased the activity and rigidity of his actions. Gonzalez intensified in the end, but the round went to Carbajal.
The punches are landing above the belt.
And I mean, he is getting it in against Gonzalez because Gonzalez is lowering his left.
Al, I talked to Danny
Hands whenever he feels like it, and right on the eye of Gonzalez.
Good solid right.
Anticipated or wanted.
Above us, they turn everything loose, these two. Gonzalez take a point away.
And of course, remember, with Carbajal being down, that's sent down.
That's right.
But I don't know.
Good right hand.
It's remote to be.
It does.
In the 4th round, Carbajal again managed to effectively resist the onslaught from Gonzalez, who delivered more punches, but Carbajal's hits were becoming more accurate and harder. The advantage that had been accumulated by Gonzalez was reduced. In the 5th round, the fight was not going as well as Gonzalez would have liked. Despite this, he aggressively attacked Carbajal, knocking him down for the 2nd time.
Down across the way. 2nd knockdown. At 7, he's up. Humberto Gonzalez runs across the ring after him.
This time Carbajal is hurt.
He is hurt.
The first 10 seconds after the knockdown were unsettling for Michael, but he quickly recovered and even managed to turn the tide, as Gonzalez was slowing down. Carbajal would have won the round and even the score on the judges' cards, if not for the knockdown, due to which this round still went to Humberto Gonzalez, who again created a solid lead on the scorecards.
I think Chiquita has pushed it right on that left eye. Carbajal seems to have his mouth open. Going to be as important an item in this fight, gentlemen, as anything.
Vision is going to be tough.
That's right, the swelling.
After the active 5th round, the boxer seemed to take a break in round 6, which was taken by Gonzalez, who managed to finish strong. When the 7th round began, both boxers had a reason to intensify their activity. Another knockdown would not necessarily guarantee a Gonzalez victory, but would be a significant step towards winning. Carbajal had a different situation. it would be difficult to win back 4 points and take the lead in 6 rounds, because he had to literally snatch victory from Gonzalez's hands. In the middle of the round, Carbajal inflicts a tough left hook, knocking Gonzalez against the ropes, which should have been a knockdown, but was missed by referee Mills Lane.
All of a sudden, because he went reeling against the ropes and only the ropes kept him up.
Again, the right hand by
Gonzalez was not going to give up and counterattacks, but for the first time in the fight, Carbajal's punches began to shake him. Michael felt that his opponent was weakening and began to invest more in each punch. Using the same left hook that had shaken Gonzalez earlier, he now delivered a knockout blow, becoming victorious.
he's not going to get up.
The fight was the fight of the year and marked the beginning of the Carbajal-Gonzalez trilogy. The boxers would meet 2 more times, and Gonzalez would win both times by a close decision of the judges. But the most memorable fight of their rivalry was their first meeting and Carbajal's triumph. In 2006, Carbajal and Gonzalez were inducted into the Boxing Hall of Fame.
The punch that did it was a huge left hook after he had hurt Gonzalez early in the round.
And by 4 points, he had been knocked down twice. First in the second and again in the fifth. Neither one gave it in. They just fought their hearts out. And for this man, the winner, to turn it all around in the 7th round, trailing on every judge's scorecard. Amazing.
January 24th, 1976, Las Vegas, Nevada. Former world super heavyweight champion, 27-year-old George Foreman, enters the ring for the first time in 15 months after being defeated by Muhammad Ali. His rival is 34-year-old Ron Lyle, who also suffered an early defeat by Ali, despite being ahead on the judges' cards when the fight ended. After that defeat, Lyle stepped into the ring against one of the greatest punchers in super heavyweight history, Ernie Shavers, and beat him by knockout. Both Foreman and Lyle received very solid royalties for the fight at that time in the mid-1970s. Big George earned $250,000, while Lyle received $140,000.
Of George Foreman and, for that matter, of Ron Lyle, each speaking for itself. Crossroads fight.
Ron Lyle began the fight with an incredible sweeping blow, with which he immediately made it clear to Foreman his purpose for entering the ring. After the initial blow, the boxers acted more conservatively, working with jabs. Foreman took the center of the ring and tried to hold it, while Lyle moved around Foreman.
Although he has a tendency to go far as you can around. Lyle showing foot movement.
In the first 2.5 minutes, the fight turned out to be tactical. But when 2 strong boxers meet, sooner or later, something exciting will happen. And with 25 seconds remaining in the first round, there was a clash. Lyle throws a powerful right hook and seriously shakes Foreman.
Lyle, and he's got Foreman in trouble. He's got him in trouble. George staggering off the rope.
Foreman stops the attack with a clinch. And then Lyle simply does not have time to respond. The round comes to an end.
A late flurry by Lyle, staggering George, who comes wobbling really back toward his corner. We're not breaking for a...
The second round, Lyle starts the same as the first, realizing that Foreman could not fully recover from the previous round. Lyle no longer danced around Big George, but began to put pressure on him.
Left jab, and that's what he must do. Lyle with a good left. George fighting back now.
An assertive boxer like Ron Lyle shouldn't be allowed to dominate in the ring. And Foreman began to respond to his opponent's actions.
That could be a mistake, can he? See that right come around and land on Foreman. Foreman in the red trunks, Lyle in the white. And the advisors are yelling to Foreman, keep those hands up. Now Lyle
The response was a success. Lyle, who probably underestimated the punching power of Foreman, was thrown into the ropes. Foreman found himself in the same situation as in his last fight against Muhammad Ali. However, George, now with the very bitter experience of past defeat in his mind, did not act so recklessly, although he missed defending against some dangerous counterattacks. In the first round, Foreman was saved by the bell, but now their positions were reversed, and it was Lyle who was in the position of waiting for the bell, and he also received a lucky break. Due to a mistake of the timekeeper, who was probably caught up in the spectacle of the fight, the second round lasted only 2 minutes.
No saving by the bell.
Despite what happened in the second round, in the third, Lyle opened aggressively.
An overhand right.
First round for Lyle, the second round for George Foreman. Lyle must be careful. You're right about the use of the right. There it was again.
However, despite Lyle's pressing, Foreman was not affected and seized the initiative, moving forward and pressing Lyle to the ropes. Lyle was unfazed by Foreman's attacks and successfully countered them at the ropes at the end of the round.
Foreman threw a right hand to the body. Foreman the red trunks, Lyle the white. Lyle. We're back for the start of round 4 in what has been a boxers, kids playing in the playground who are 40 up. Producer 3 times the second round. In our truck, Lyle all over. Lyle has Foreman in trouble. Foreman is down. It started with a right, then a left. Lyle putting on a tremendous demonstration. Now for 15 months since here, he's been relatively inactive, except for that charade in Toronto against the frightful Todd. Now Foreman's fighting back. Oh, Foreman is in trouble. Lyle caught him with a good left. Now George, now George struck back. Now George fought back with a magnificent right. George fought back. Lyle let himself open for that.
He got overly aggressive there, and he was very excited. And Foreman was going hard, desperation punches.
A minute to go in a wild fight. Just as Lyle apparently had George in trouble. George with that punching power that we talked about in the prior fight. Lyle is now ready to go. Against the rope. About 40 seconds left in the round. Lyle covering up against the rope. His handler screaming to Foreman, hit him in the body. George at the head. Lyle is now wide open. He is... Lyle trying to swing back. This isn't artistic, but it is slugging the way the public wants. Only 10 seconds left in the round. Now Foreman was staggered. Foreman was staggered while Lyle left. Foreman goes down.
It could be noted at this time, the Las Vegas Boxing Commission required super heavyweight boxers to enter the ring wearing 8-ounce gloves. In the 5th round, the action continued, although not as dynamically as before, as the previous round took a lot of energy from the fighters. Despite this, the amount of dynamite that was in their fists remained the same.
Staggering all over the ring. Lyle against the ropes, throwing the left uppercut. Nice, and yet he doesn't even seem to be with it. Kenny made the point that George's hands are down, and so they are. George is falling forward over Lyle, trying to hit back. George got a series of left jabs. Good right uppercut by Lyle. Foreman again in trouble. See him falling forward.
Foreman and Lyle exchanged the most severe blows yet, and it was difficult to say who had the higher punching power. But it appeared that Lyle was more tired. Big George locks Lyle into the corner and delivers a large number of punches. During this exchange, the referee does not seem to take an active part in the fight, and subsequently did not stop Foreman from delivering a heavy knockout. Lyle loses consciousness while still standing, and the referee, who started the count, should instead have been calling for medical attention for Lyle. By the end of 1976, the Foreman-Lyle fight was recognized as the Fight of the Year, and since then all publications that make up their ratings of the greatest fights in the history of the super heavyweights put this fight in their top 10. It is worth noting that Ron Lyle entered amateur boxing at the age of 28, and just a year later became the amateur boxing champion of North America. In the professional ring, he made his debut at the age of 30, and after 4 years, rose to fight Ali. Against Foreman, as in the case of Ali, Ron Lyle won the fight on the judges' cards. Even though Lyle has never been a world champion, he is considered one of the strongest boxers of the Golden Super Heavyweight division. As for Foreman, he made an impressive return from his first and very disappointing defeat in his career. And this victory led him to a second fight with Joe Frazier.
Serious, so this was really a serious bout. I was off, I was rusty, and this is what happens to you when you stay out of boxing. You get knocked down, but I feel I'm a champion at heart. I can always get up and win fights. I think that all credit should be given to Ron Lyle.
This is the world of boxing. Thank you for watching. Please press the like button and comment below, as well as subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any new episodes about legends of the past.